Scottish legal institutions in the High Middle Ages are, for the purposes of this article, the informal and formal systems which governed and helped to manage Scottish society between the years 900 and 1288, a period roughly corresponding with the general European era usually called the High Middle Ages. Scottish society in this period was predominantly Gaelic. Early Gaelic law tracts, first written down in the 9th century, reveal a society highly concerned with kinship, status, honour and the regulation of blood feuds. The early Scottish lawman, or Breitheamh, became the Latin Judex. The Great Breitheamh became the Magnus Judex, which arguably developed into the office of Justiciar, an office which survives to this day in that of Lord Justice General. Scottish common law began to take shape at the end of the period, assimilating Gaelic and Celtic law with practices from Anglo-Norman England and the continent. Native law. Pre-14th century law amongst the native Scots is not always well attested, though does not survive a vast corpus of native law from Scotland particularly, certainly nothing like that which comes from early medieval Ireland. However, the latter gives some basis for reconstructing pre-14th century Scottish law. King Robert Bruce cites common customs, as well as language, as features which made the Scots and Irish one people. In the earliest extant Scottish legal manuscript, there is a document called Leges Interpretos Scotos. The document is in French, and is almost certainly a French translation of an earlier Gaelic document. The sentence, Le croe legalnes et la enoch unius quies commona sun pers illicet in respectu de la enoch feminarum suarum, contains two Gaelic terms, and one term of Welsh origin which the French translator left alone. Crow represents the Old Irish word crow, which means homicide, or compensation for homicide. Enoch corresponds to Old Irish enoch, which meant face. The text contains many other Gaelic terms. Later medieval legal documents written both in Latin and Middle English contain more Gaelic legal terms, examples including slains, cumherba, machelf, scolok, filly, colpin dach, cuneveth, Toca and Gulra. Additionally, we know a great deal about early Gaelic law, often called Brehon laws, which helps reconstruct native legal practices. In the 12th century, and certainly in the 13th, strong continental legal influences began to have more effect, such as canon law and various Anglo-Norman practices. Judex is what was known in medieval Gaelic as Breitheamh or Breitheamh, and later becoming known in English as Doomster. The institution is so Gaelic in nature that it is rarely translated by scholars. It probably represents a post-Norman continuity with the ancient Gaelic orders of lawmen called in English today brehons. However, in rare cases, the term was also used for similar Anglo-Saxon officials in the English-speaking lands of the Scottish king. Bearers of the office almost always have Gaelic names north of the Forth or in the southwest. Continental names are rare. Judices were often royal officials who supervised baronial, abbatial and other lower-ranking courts. They seem to have been officials who, at least in the 13th century, were designated by province. For example, we have one styled Bosley Judici Murnus. There also existed an official called the Judex Regius, and perhaps this status was a way of ranking various orders of Gaelic lawmen. Justiciar, however, the main official of law in the post-Davidian kingdom of the Scots was the Justiciar. The institution has some Anglo-Norman origins, but in Scotland north of the Forth it represented some form of continuity with an older office. For instance, Mormarcosinton of Fife is styled Judex Magnus, and it seems that the Justiciarship of Scotia was just a further Latinization, Normanization consolidation of the position. By the middle of the 13th century, responsibility of the Justiciar became fully formalized. He supervised the activity and behavior of royal sheriffs and sergeants, held courts and reported on these things to the king personally. Normally, there were two justiciarships, organized by linguistic boundaries, the Justiciar of Scotia and the Justiciar of Lothian. Sometimes there was also a Justiciar of Galloway. The justiciarship of Lothian dates to somewhere in the reign of Maelcoluim IV. As English expanded westwards in the 13th century and after, Lothian came to include not only the core southeast, but also subordinated the sheriffs of Stirling, Lanark, Dumbarton and even Ayr. When Edward I of England conquered Scotland, he divided it into 4 justiciarships of 2 justiciars each: Scotia north of the Grampians, Scotia south of the Grampians, Lothian, and Galloway. Courts.